My name is Daniel Voss. I was a 28-year-old architect living in the old quarter of Prague in a narrow apartment with creaking floorboards and a window that looked out onto a cobblestone alley where cats gathered at midnight like they were holding secret meetings. I believed in blueprints, in mathematics, in the precise measurable distance between two walls. I did not believe in curses. I did not believe that love could survive death. Then I met Mara. It was the autumn of 2019, late October, when the city smells like wet stone and burning leaves and something else. Something older, something that has no name. I had gone to the Malstrana cemetery on a Thursday evening, not because I was morbid, because I was lonely. And cemeteries in Prague are quiet and beautiful in a way that feels almost merciful. I was sketching the iron gate of a 19th century tomb when I heard her laugh. Not a frightening laugh. Not the kind of laugh that raises the hairs on your neck. It was the most ordinary, human laugh I had ever heard, warm and slightly surprised, like someone who had just been caught doing something they weren't supposed to. I turned. She was standing 3 rows of headstones away, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, a bunch of wildflowers in her hand. She was reading the inscription on an old grave marker, and whatever it said had apparently amused her. She wore a long burgundy coat and old leather boots, and her skin was the pale, luminous kind that seems to collect light rather than reflect it. She looked up and caught me staring. "Sorry," she called, "not sorry at all. It says he was a man of few words and even fewer friends." I thought that was funny. "It is funny," I said. She tilted her head. "You're sketching." "I'm an architect. Architects don't usually sketch cemeteries." "I'm not a usual architect." She smiled at that. Her smile was slow. It started at the corner of her mouth and moved like it was considering whether it wanted to go further, and then it decided yes, and it took over her whole face, and something in my chest did a thing it had never done before. Like a door I hadn't known was locked suddenly swinging open. "I'm Mara," she said. "Daniel." We shook hands. Her fingers were cold. Ice cold, colder than the October air could account for, but I thought nothing of it. I thought, she must run cold. Some people do. She asked if she could see my sketches. I said yes. She sat beside me on the stone bench and looked at each one carefully, like she was reading something important. Nobody had ever looked at my work that way before. With that kind of attention, that kind of hunger. "You see things," she said. "I just draw what's there." "No," she said, and her voice was quiet and certain. "You see the life inside the things. Look," she pointed to my sketch of the iron gate. "You drew it bending slightly. The real gate is perfectly straight. But in your drawing, it bends just a little, like it's tired, like it's been standing there so long it wants to lean." I looked at my own drawing. She was right. I hadn't noticed. "You feel things," she said, "and you put them in the lines without realizing it." Nobody had ever said anything like that to me. I was in love with her before I even knew her last name. We met 7 more times before she let me take her to dinner. Each time, it was at the cemetery. She would appear, and I say appear deliberately because I never saw her arrive. I would be sketching, or simply sitting, and then I would look up, and she would be there, 3 or 4 rows away, as if she had grown from the ground. Each time, we talked for hours, about books, about cities, about the weight of old things. She knew everything about the history of Prague, not just the famous stories, but the small ones. The ones that never make it into guidebooks. The baker in 1612 who built an extra room onto his house for a stranger who turned up bleeding in the rain, and how that room was still there, sealed in a building on Nerudova Street. The woman who had planted roses along the river wall in 1887, and how the roses still bloomed every May, 3 generations of the same thorny, dark red variety, as if they remembered. "How do you know all this?" I asked her once. She smiled that slow smile. "I've lived here a long time." "How long?" She looked away, out across the headstones. "A long time," she said again, and her voice had something in it that I couldn't name. Not sadness exactly, something heavier, something that had been carried so far it had become part of the body. I asked her where she lived. "Not far," she said. I asked for her phone number. "I don't have a phone," she said. I asked how I could find her then, if I wanted to see her outside the cemetery. "You always find me here," she said, and looked at me with those dark, steady eyes. "Isn't that enough?" It wasn't enough. But I didn't say that, because even then, even in those early days when everything was just beginning, some part of me understood that with Mara, you did not push. You waited. You let her come to you, the way you let a deer come close, slowly, without sudden movements, holding your breath. On the 8th meeting, she agreed to dinner. We went to a restaurant in the old town that she chose, small, dim, with candles on every table and a menu handwritten in a language that wasn't quite Czech. The owner knew her. He greeted her with the kind of warm familiarity you reserve for someone who has been coming for years, and he brought her a glass of dark red wine without her ordering it. She ate very little. I noticed. She moved the food around her plate with the careful, deliberate movements of someone performing a task they found unnecessary. "You're not hungry," I said. "I eat differently," she said. "What does that mean?" She met my eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, something passed across her face. A kind of warning, a kind of "please don't ask this." Then she smiled and said, "It means I never quite developed a taste for restaurant food. I prefer things that are fresher." I thought she meant she was a health food person. I thought she meant farmers markets and organic vegetables. I was not paying enough attention. She kissed me for the first time on All Souls' Day, November 2nd, the night the city puts candles on every grave and the cemeteries glow like fields of fireflies. We were walking along the river, and the reflection of 1,000 lit windows trembled in the black water, and she stopped and turned to me and kissed me with the conviction of someone who had been thinking about it for a very long time. Her lips were cool. Her hands, when she held my face, were cold, but the kiss was warm, burning even. Like the cold was only the surface, and underneath was something ancient and bright. When she pulled back, her eyes were different, darker. Pupils so wide the black had almost consumed the color entirely. "Daniel," she said, and my name in her mouth sounded like it had never been said correctly before. "Yes," I said, "I need you to understand something. Tell me." She was quiet for a long moment, looking at the water. A canal boat moved past, its lantern leaving a long yellow ripple. "When people love each other," she said slowly, "they become part of each other. Don't they? Something passes between them. Something that can't be given back." "Yes," I said. "That is especially true with me." She looked at me. "I need you to know that. What I take from the people I love, I don't mean to take it, but I do. And what I give them in return is real. It is the most real thing I am capable of. But it changes them." I should have asked what she meant. I should have asked what she was. Instead, I said, "I want to be changed by you." She closed her eyes. Like my answer hurt her, like it was exactly what she'd feared and hoped for at the same time. "You shouldn't want that," she whispered. "I do," I said. She opened her eyes. She took my hand. Her fingers were cold as river water. "Then we don't have much time," she said. "We never do." I thought she was being romantic. I thought she meant the usual thing, the impermanence of good moments, the way happiness always carries the shadow of its own ending. I thought she was a melancholy woman who'd been hurt before, and that what she needed was someone who would stay. I was so wrong. 3 weeks after that night by the river, I noticed the first thing. I wasn't sleeping, not the ordinary kind of not sleeping, the tossing and turning, mind-racing kind. This was different. I would lie down, and the darkness behind my eyes was too full, too alive, like something was moving through it. And then, the dreams started. Not nightmares. That's important. They didn't feel like nightmares while I was inside them. They felt like the most beautiful experiences of my life. I would dream of standing in a vast dark forest under a sky thick with stars, and Mara would be there, and we would walk together through the trees, and everything had the quality of perfect silence, not empty silence, but full silence. The silence of something that has always been and will always be. But when I woke, I would find my pillow damp, not from sweat. I couldn't explain what it was. And my hands had a faint tremor in the mornings. Gone by noon, but there in those first waking hours, a trembling in the fingers, like something had been passing through them. I lost 4 pounds in 3 weeks without trying. I started to look at the world differently. Colors were both brighter and less real. The daylight seemed thinner, like paper held up to a lamp. But at night, everything intensified. Shadows had texture. Darkness had depth I had never noticed. I started to understand why Mara preferred evenings. I started to prefer them myself. My colleagues noticed. My friend Tom took me for beer and told me I looked pale. "You look like you haven't slept in a month," he said. "Are you sick?" "I'm in love," I told him. He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then, what is she?" It was an odd way to phrase it. Not who. What? I told him she was a woman I'd met in the cemetery. He put his beer down. "Daniel," he said, very carefully. "You know the old stories about Malstrana Cemetery, yes?" I said I didn't. He looked like he was deciding something. Then he shook his head and picked his beer back up. "Old stories," he said. "Never mind. You should sleep more. That's all." But he looked frightened. It was a Wednesday in late November, a night of hard frost that made the cobblestones shine like glass when Mara finally told me the truth. We were in my apartment. She was sitting in the chair by the window. She always chose that chair, always positioned herself with her back to the wall, facing the room, facing the door, the way an animal would. And I brought her tea she wouldn't drink. And I sat across from her, and I watched her face in the lamplight. She was so beautiful it was almost wrong. Not perfect, not symmetrical or flawless in any conventional sense. Her nose was slightly crooked. There was a faint scar along her left jaw, silver white with age. But she was beautiful the way old buildings are beautiful, because of what she had survived, because of the years inside her. "How old are you?" I asked. She looked at her tea. "What do you think?" "I think you are very old," I said. "I think you were born before anyone alive today was born. I think the things you know about Prague, you know them because you were there." She said nothing. "And I said that you are not entirely alive, not in the way I am." Her hands, wrapped around the untouched teacup, tightened almost imperceptibly. "I was born in 1743, she said, in a village outside Prague that no longer exists. My mother was a midwife. My father was a man who made candles. I was the third of 6 children, the only one who survived past childhood. The lamplight cast shadows under her eyes that were too deep. "I was 18 when I died," she said, "or rather when I should have died. There was a fever. The whole village had it. Everyone died. I did not. Not properly. Something in me refused. Something in me held on so tightly that even death couldn't pry it loose." She paused. "That is not a gift. Do you understand? That is not a blessing. It is a kind of violence that was done to me by my own will in a moment of terror." "What are you?" I asked. The same question Tom had asked. What? Not who. "I don't use the words," she said. "The words that people use are wrong. They come from stories, and the stories were written by people who were afraid, and when people are afraid, they make things simpler and more monstrous than they are. What I am is simply someone who has been here too long. Someone who persists. Someone who needs, in order to persist, certain things that the living carry and do not know they carry." "What things?" She met my eyes. "Warmth," she said. "Life force, the particular energy that living bodies generate simply by being alive. I draw it, slowly, without meaning to, from the people I am close to, especially the people I love." The room was very quiet. "The dreams," I said. "Yes, the weight loss, the trembling." "Yes, Daniel, I'm sorry. I tried to stay away. I tried for 20 years. After the last time, I did not let myself love anyone, because I know what I do to them." "But you?" She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "You were sitting in my cemetery drawing a gate that was tired, and you felt like something I had been waiting for without knowing I was waiting." "The last time," I said. "Who was the last time?" She looked out the window. "His name was Joseph. He was a musician. He loved me for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, he was an old man. He was 31 years old and he looked 70. His hair was white. His hands shook too badly to play. The cold of the room seemed to deepen. Did he know? He knew. He refused to leave." She turned back to me. Her eyes were bright with something that in a living person would have been tears, but which I understood, now, was something older than tears. "He said what you said, that he wanted to be changed by me, that whatever I took, the time with me was worth more. Was he wrong?" I asked. She did not answer. I should have left her. Every sensible part of me knew it. The rational man who believed in blueprints and mathematics and the precise distance between walls, he knew exactly what this was. This was a story that ended badly. This was a door that once you walked through it, you did not walk back. I didn't leave. I won't dress it up as heroism or romance. The truth is, simpler and stranger, I could not imagine a life in which I didn't see Mara. The world without her already seemed like a lesser world, a thinner world, a world with the color turned down. Whatever she was taking from me, I could feel the lack of it, yes, but I could also feel what she gave in return, and what she gave was an intensity of living I had never experienced. Every moment with her was vivid. Every conversation was charged. Even sitting in silence with her was more alive than anything I had done before. I told her I was staying. She wept then, truly wept, silent, tearless, her whole body shaking with the effort of it, and I held her, and she was cold as stone in my arms, and I held her anyway. "Then we have to do something," she said against my shoulder. "There is a way. I have known about it for a long time, but I was never brave enough, and the person never. It requires them to choose it fully, with full knowledge." "What is it?" She pulled back, looked at me. "There is a ritual," she said. "Old. Older than me. It requires one night and a specific place and a transfer that goes both ways. Instead of me drawing your life slowly, unknowingly, over months, It is done all at once, deliberately, openly, and if done correctly, if the love is real, if the will is equal on both sides, it creates an equilibrium, a balance. I stop draining you. We become linked. Two sides of the same thing, neither fully alive nor fully dead, but together, without the slow diminishment. What does neither fully alive nor fully dead mean for me? I asked. She hesitated. You would change. You would not age, not quickly. Your needs would shift. You would be more comfortable in darkness. You would find the daylight thinner. She paused. You would be what I am. Not entirely, but enough. I thought about Tom, about my office, about morning coffee and sunlit drawing boards and the ordinary machinery of a life I had built. Then I thought about Mara in the cemetery, laughing at a grave inscription, her dark hair loose, wildflowers in her hand. Where? I asked. Where does the ritual happen? She looked at me for a long time, searching my face for something. The oldest part of the cemetery, she said finally, at the hour the city calls the Devil's Hour, 3 a.m, on the night of the winter solstice, when the darkness is at its longest. That's 3 weeks from now, I said. Yes, she said. 3 weeks, and Daniel, she held my face in her cold hands, and for the first time, her touch didn't feel like cold. It felt like the temperature of a very old, very deep love. You must be certain, because once it is done, there is no way back. There is only forward. However long forward is. How long has your forward been? I asked. 276 years, she said. I kissed her cold hands. Then I hope mine is at least that long, I said. Those 3 weeks were the most beautiful and terrible of my life. Beautiful because I knew what was coming, and knowing made everything luminous. The last 3 weeks of the life I had known, I spent them looking at everything with new eyes. The way morning light fell across my drawing board, the warmth of coffee in my hands, the sound of rain on cobblestones. I memorized each sensation the way you memorize a face you might never see again. Terrible, because Mara was different in those weeks. Quieter. She would go still sometimes, completely still the way a photograph is still, and stare at something I couldn't see, and when I called her name she would come back slowly, like someone surfacing from very deep water. What do you see? I asked her once, when she came back. The others, she said. What others? She looked at me with those ancient eyes, the ones I have loved. They leave impressions. The longer I exist, the more of them there are, and sometimes I can see them. Layered over the present, like transparencies stacked on top of each other. Joseph? Yes, and others before him. She looked down at her hands. I see them and I think, I took so much from them. Even when I tried not to. Even when I loved them best and they all chose to stay, every one of them. The same way you are choosing. And I could never decide if that meant I was worth choosing or if love simply makes people foolish. Maybe both, I said. She almost smiled. Maybe both. 10 days before the solstice, I wrote letters to Tom, to my parents, to the few people who constituted my ordinary life. Not goodbye letters, I didn't know what to call them really. Not explanations, just acknowledgments. Saying, I love you. Saying, I have been lucky to know you. Saying, the choices we make with our whole heart are the only choices worth making. I didn't mail them. I left them in a drawer. I don't know why. In case, I suppose, in case the ritual failed. In case what came after was not what Mara promised, but something darker. I wanted there to be a record that I had chosen with full knowledge, full will. I wanted there to be a record that I had loved her. December 21st, the longest night. I met her at the cemetery gate at 2:45 am. The city was asleep. The frost was so deep it had turned the world silver, every surface encrusted with tiny crystalline stars that caught the moonlight and threw it back in cold sparks. My breath came out in clouds. My hands were cold even inside my gloves. Mara was waiting for me in the long burgundy coat, her dark hair loose, just as she had been on the first day. She was holding a single rose, dark red, almost black in the moonlight. One of the roses from the wall by the river. I recognized the variety. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Yes," I said. We walked together through the cemetery, past the rows of headstones with their carved names and their chiseled dates, 1834, 1867, 1712, 1903. All those numbers that marked the parentheses of a life, the opening and closing of a parenthesis of consciousness. Mara moved through them the way water moves through rocks. She had been here before all of them, and she would be here after. And she knew it, and carried it. We stopped in the oldest part, where the headstones were so weathered their names had gone. Just shapes, just the suggestion of names, worn smooth by centuries. Mara knelt on the frozen ground. From inside her coat she took a small knife, old, with a bone handle and a glass vial and a small cloth pouch. "The ritual is simple," she said. "That's what most people don't understand about old magic. It doesn't have to be complicated. It only has to be true." She told me what to do. We each made a small cut, hers on her palm, mine on mine. She bled slowly, darkly. I bled quickly, brightly. We pressed our palms together and held them there. She began to speak. Not in Czech, not in any language I recognized. It was old, older than language as I understood it, more like the sounds a language is made of before it decides to become words. Sounds that meant, I give, I take, I choose, I stay. And then something happened that I cannot describe in any architectural or rational terms. The air changed. Not temperature. The cold remained, the frost remained, but the quality of the air changed, the way air changes before a storm. That pressurized, electric, waiting feeling. Except this was not threatening. This was like the feeling just before a door opens. Like the feeling just before a name is spoken that you have been waiting to hear. Something moved between our joined hands, from her into me and from me into her, and it was not painful. It was the opposite of painful. It was like the unlocking of something that had always been locked, like a window opened in a room that had been sealed since before I was born. The rose in her free hand bloomed. In December, in the frost, in the middle of the night. It bloomed open, fully, completely, dark red petals unfolding in the moonlight as if it were high summer, and then it held, and the smell of it came to me across the cold air. Roses, and something older than roses, something I would smell for the rest of my life and recognize as the smell of a door closing on one world and opening on another. Mara stopped speaking. We stayed with our palms pressed together for a long time. When we finally separated, the cuts were healed, both of them, without a scar. She looked at me. "How do you feel?" she whispered. I took stock. The cold, I could feel it differently. Still cold, but not unwelcome. The moonlight, sharper. The shadows, deeper and more textured, full of moving detail that hadn't been there before. My heartbeat, slower, more deliberate, like something that had been running now found its proper pace. "I feel like I finally arrived somewhere," I said. She pressed the dark rose into my hands. It was still blooming, still holding its improbable midnight bloom. "Keep that," she said. "It won't die. Nothing does, anymore, that is connected to you. That was 6 years ago. I am 34 years old, and I look 34 years old, and I expect I will look 34 for quite some time. I still work as an architect. I work evenings now. Clients find me eccentric, but my work is better than it has ever been. I see things in structures that I didn't see before. The life inside the lines. The way a building bends, just slightly, with the weight of its own history. Tom figured it out eventually. He sat across from me in a bar 2 years after the solstice and said, very quietly, "You haven't changed. Not at all, since the night you met her." And I looked at him with what I now understood were different eyes, and I said, "I told you I was in love." He shook his head slowly, and after a long time he raised his glass, and I raised mine, and we drank. He's never asked me to explain. He visits, always in the evenings, and Mara makes him tea that he actually drinks, and he tells us about his wife and his daughter who just learned to walk, and he doesn't ask questions. Some things are better understood than explained. Mara is Mara. She is still exactly what she was in the cemetery on that October afternoon, curious and ancient and warm in the specific way that very old things are warm, with the warmth of something that has survived so much that survival itself has become a form of love. She still laughs at funny grave inscriptions. She still carries wildflowers. She still sits in the chair with her back to the wall watching the door. But she doesn't go still and stare at things I can't see anymore. Or rather, she does, sometimes. And when she does, I can see them too. The layered transparencies of the people she has loved, Joseph and the others. They are not frightening. They are like photographs in a long hallway, the history of a love that refused to be temporary. I have added myself to that hallway. I am in there alongside the rest. And I will be in there for a very long time. The dark rose sits on my windowsill. It has never died. Some mornings when I sit in the thin winter light, still adjusting to the brightness even after all these years, I look at it and feel the full weight of what I chose. The ordinary life I traded, the daylight I gave up in exchange for a much longer night. The rational man I used to be, who believed only in blueprints. I do not regret it. This is the important thing I want you to understand, whoever you are, listening to this story. Not the horror of what Mara is, or was. Not the darkness of it. The truth is simpler and older than horror. There is a kind of love that ruins you. And some ruins are beautiful. Some ruins are the most beautiful things in the world, the mossy stone archway, the roofless cathedral open to the stars, the iron gate that bends slightly because it has been. Standing so long, it has learned to lean. Mara is standing by the window now, watching the street below. The evening has just started, the lamps are coming on in the alley, one by one, orange lights spreading across the wet cobblestones. In a moment she will turn and say something unexpected that I will think about for days. In a moment. We will go out into the city, into the beautiful old dark of it, into the streets that she has known for nearly 3 centuries. I will take her cold hand. And we will walk.